Hello everyone and welcome to my channel. In this video I want to do something a bit more fun. I want to discuss some of my all-time favorite actors. And I was thinking about this last week about who is really my favorite actors of all time. And I thought to myself that if I had to make a top 10 list, that will be very challenging, but in a fun way. And when I started creating my list, I realized that this is very difficult, also because there's so many great actors around the world, and if you have to pick 10 favorites, then you can only be subjective. And what I mean by that is that if I have to think like what the general audience thinks, then I would probably only pick Robert De Niro, Al Pacino, Daniel Day-Lewis, and Marlon Brando. You know, those four is probably, they will always be mentioned in a list, and therefore I'm not picking them. And that is not me saying they are bad actors, but it's just that I don't feel a connection to them as I do to those I have picked. And I also thought about another thing while creating this list, and that is I have only picked English-speaking actors, and I kind of feel a bit bad about that because I know there's so many great actors around the world. But it's just, for me personally, I will only pick these 10 I have chosen. My number 10 was an actress who was actually married to Clark Gable. Her name was Carole Lombard, who made a lot of movies back in the 30s where she really had her prime. Unfortunately, she didn't live very long. She died in a plane accident, I think it was 1942, and she was only 33 years old. So the reason I pick her at my number 10 is that she really didn't have a long career, you know. So who knows how she would have evolved if she was alive back then and continued to be alive. But why I choose her is that even though she didn't live very long, she had an enormous impact on especially like American movies back in the 30s, and she had an enormous charm about her, and she was very good comical charm. There's two particular movies that I highly recommend if you haven't watched any of her stuff, and that is My Man Godfrey, from I think it's from 37 with William Powell. That movie is exceptional, and she really has a unique acting performance in that. Another film I would recommend is To Be or Not to Be. I don't know if it was her last film she made, but it was one of her last, directed by Ernst Lubitsch from the early 40s, and there she also brings so much of her comical presence into the picture. She is, you know, I'm not sure she was a great actress in the sense that she could play serious dramas. I don't know about that because she never had the chance to evolve, but in terms of her, but she had such a unique way of being on the screen, and she had a great sense of humor, and I feel like when she was on screen, she kind of took all of the attention away from all the other actors, and that is a huge praise I can give her. And at my number 9, that is Bette Davis, who was also an incredible actress, who actually also evolved over time. She had huge success in her early life, but also when she becomes a bit older. I think what makes Bette Davis a great actress is how she transforms herself into the characters she is playing. And she was not necessarily a beauty queen like Carole Lombard or Marilyn Monroe or Grace Kelly. She wasn't necessarily a beautiful person, but she had such a great face anyway, and she could really transform herself in a way that no other actress really can. I really think she should be. She is one of the most, I think, influential actress of all time, in my opinion. Right from some of her earlier work, I really would recommend the movie now Voyager from, I can't remember from which year, but it's from the 40s, and All About Eve, which is a classic. And when she became a bit older, she did some quite unusual movies. The one was Whatever Happened to Baby Jane and Hush Hush Sweet Charlotte. I think it was in the early 60s, where she really looks like a sick woman, but she's so great in those films. Completely brilliant performances, and completely unusual for the time, I think, and also very different from her earlier work. In the earlier phase of her career, she played a little more sort of independent women, sort of with a kind of a charm about her, as a bit of sophistication. But in Hush Hush Sweet Charlotte and Whatever Happened to Baby Jane, all of that is gone. There she's just a witch to look at. I will really look at the performances in those two and compare it to her earlier careers, because it's very interesting to see how she evolved. And she was a great actress, really wonderful actress, I think. And my number 8, and that is an actor that many people know about. It is, of course, Jack Nicholson. He would probably be on many lists. And what is it about Jack Nicholson that people like, really? Because what he has this. He's also this. He's not the best-looking man in the world, but he has a charm about him. And yet he's also quite frightening in a way when he plays his roles. You know, you look at all of his work, he plays the characters he plays. He does it in different ways, and you don't see the same performance by Jack Nicholson again. Really, he also transforms himself into the characters he's playing. Some of the movies, I really think he is at his peak. It's 5 Easy Pieces, The Shining, of course, and Chinatown. Those 3, I think he's absolutely brilliant. And of course he also continued to play great roles, and also in his later careers he also did a great part in the Scorsese film The Departed, where he plays this gangster role, but also very different to his earlier careers. There he's always, if there's something about him you can say that is going through his roles, is that he is kind of a bit over the top, but over the top in a very unique way. He doesn't overplay his roles. He does it in a kind of, I wouldn't say realistic way, but you believe in his performance. And he has a wonderful face and a wonderful way of takes you into his mindset in a way. I think the best thing about The Shining is not the hotel or the horror plot. No, it's really his performance and sort of how he becomes more weird. And I really think that just the way he says his lines is so unique, and that is something. He is an actor who understands kind of the poetry of the lines that he says. So he never says them in a bad way. He understands the words he's saying. Whether he thinks, whether he does it intentional or not, but he's one of the great actors of all time, in my opinion. And at my number 7, that is everyone's favorite actor in some ways. That is, of course, James Stewart, or Jimmy Stewart. I don't know why people call him Jimmy Stewart, but he's called both James and Jimmy. James Stewart is, how should I say it? I'm not saying that he is you can pick many other great actors who's much better than him. I wouldn't call him I'm not even sure I would call him a great actor, but what he does is in a way still so unique. He always he's the face of America. I think Hitchcock says something like that. He's the ordinary man, and everyone can identify with him. And that is the great thing about James Stewart. I think you can always feel what he's feeling in the films he is in. And some of his roles are very different. You can talk about his role in It's a Wonderful Life and compare it to Vertigo or Rope by Hitchcock. Very different performances to It's a Wonderful Life, or to the film he did with Lubitsch, The Shop Around the Corner. Also very different. There he plays his role in a much more comical way. So yeah, he even though I'm not saying that he's a great actor, he still always does the roles he's playing very well. So you can't help not liking him, and even in some way like there's a film called Harvey, where he sort of he has a fantasy, not a fantasy, but he imagines a big rabbit, and it's a good comedy, by the way, but he still has this, I don't know what it is, but you just feel something for him, you know, and you like seeing him on the screen. And at my number 6, and this is an actor I didn't really think I would put on this list beforehand, but when I start thinking about him, I just thought he's so great in every role he's playing, and that is of course Donald Pleasence. You know, what is it about Donald Pleasence that is great about him? And that is, and then I think a bit like what I said about Jack Nicholson and Bette Davis. He also transformed himself into the roles he's playing. If you look at the films he has done, they are very different from each other, and he also isn't afraid of doing something a bit more serious or artsy to something more commercial. You know, he has played, he's been in James Bond, Halloween. He did lots of Halloween films, if I remember correctly. He also plays a killer in Columbo, which is, by the way, one of the best episodes in the series, if you haven't seen that. And he plays, what is he playing? He's in The Great Escape, and then he also plays a very twisted character in a very heavy movie called The Caretaker. I don't know if some of you have watched that, but that is a film based on a play by Harold Pinter, and he plays this homeless man who is really, you don't really understand him at all, and it's a very heavy film. It's not a very fun film. It's not even a film I want to watch anytime soon, because it's not fun at all. But his performance in that film is so great. I love the way he speaks and uses his mimic, and just the way he walks in a way. You can't. I think he's a bit more like a theater actor than a film actor in some ways, but even on the screen he's just magnificent. And I think I've never heard anyone talk bad about Donald Pleasence, and that is probably why he's such a unique actor, and in some ways a bit underrated, because I don't think many people put him on a list of their favorite actors. So I thought, yeah, he has to be on this list. And at my number 5, and that is Claudia Reigns. What a brilliant actor. Such a great face also. You know, Claudia Reigns is so different than Donald Pleasence, and yet he has so much charisma. And what Claudia Reigns does is that, of course, she has a brilliant voice also, but you can't help not liking him in the films she does. You know, look at a film like Notorious by Alfred Hitchcock. You know, Claudia Reigns is the villain, and yet you have more sympathy for him than you have for Kerry Green, and that says something, you know. But he was such a unique actor as well. And at my number 4, that is Montgomery Clift. And he is the complete opposite than Claudia Reigns, because he's always so tormented on screen, isn't he? Every time you see him, he's always playing some conflicted character. I think he was the same in real life, in his personal life. He was a conflicted person, but he was quite very modern actor for the time being. Back then it was very, he was a bit of like a method actor, so he took the roles very seriously and almost were the characters he was playing. And he I think in some ways, if Montgomery Clift were peaking late, if he was born later, I think maybe he would have a more happy life, because I think the style he is playing almost feel like an actor you will see in the 70s. But I think like he was ahead of his time. And at my number 3, that is an actress called Olivia de Havilland. I think is how you pronounce her name. I've always have trouble in pronouncing her name. What a great actress. You know, what is it about her? You know, everybody loves Olivia de Havilland, don't they? But she had an interesting career in some ways, because her sister was also a very famous actress, Joan Fontaine, and there's a bit of a gossip story about them that they didn't really like each other that much. I don't know how true that story is or not, but if you look at their careers, they really have at least an acting rivalries, because they peaked at the same time and they made films at the same time, and they both were nominated for awards and all that stuff. I also really like Joan Fontaine, but I must admit that I think Olivia de Havilland is a much greater actress. She is an actress who kind of stood, even when she plays with great roles for men. For example, when she plays, he's in the film The Heiress with Montgomery Clift, who I talked about before. Even though Montgomery Clift is brilliant in that film, Olivia de Havilland steals the show. She's also in a film called My Cousin Rachel, which is based on a book by Daphne du Maurier. The film, I think, is quite good actually. I don't know if many of you know that, but she plays, she's in that film with Richard Burton, who's also a great actor, but I think Olivia de Havilland is better. So again, that says something, you know. Richard Burton, one of the most influential actors of all time, but it's Olivia de Havilland who steals the show. She could that. She just had that uniqueness about her, and therefore I think she's one of the greatest actors of all time. And at my number 2, that is Kerry Green. Oh my God, I love Cary Grant. You can't not like him on the screen. I think Cary Grant said something like, everybody wants to be Cary Grant, even me, something like that, because he is of course Cary Grant, but he's not he's not the images you see on the screen. His real name was, I think, Archie Leeds, something like that. So he took a new name when he became an actor, which is great for him because everybody knows the name. And sure, in some ways Cary Grant isn't that much known for maybe serious drama. He always have a sense of humor about him, but I still think he could play some roles a bit twisted. If you look at some of the films he did for Hitchcock, Suspicion and Notorious, yeah, sure, he has a charm about him, but the parts he's playing is not necessarily good guys. You know, they have layers. They are a bit more complicated, and I think he could play that. I think maybe sometimes, if I have a criticism towards him, is maybe some directors used him wrong to only so he only could play the Mr. Charming, you know, and he was very charming, but I think he was more than just charming. He was a great actor, and really think about, if you look at the films he did with Hitchcock, love his parts there. He did a wonderful film, and that was called Penny Serenade. And there that is, even though he also has a sense of humor about him in that, that's a different role you normally see for Cary Grant, because he plays a father to a child there, and it's really quite beautiful film. It's really underrated, that film, if you haven't watched that. But he was wonderful in, have you ever watched The Bishop's Wife, where he plays an angel, and he's so funny in that film. Oh my god, you even when he plays with David Niven, a great actors, by the way, but Cary Grant just steals the show. He always does. He also in the is it the Philadelphia Story with Katharine Hepburn and James Stewart. It's Cary Grant you want to see every time. It's not Katharine Hepburn or James Stewart. It's Cary Grant, and yeah, you love him. I love him. I could have picked him as my number one, but there's just one actor I prefer a bit more, and that is Spencer Tracy. Wonderful actor. Again, I think many actors nowadays is very influenced by Spencer Tracy, the way he played. He was just the characters he played. If I had to pick three really wonderful films by him, it's the three he did with Stanley Kramer, the director. Inherit the Wind, Judgment of Nuremberg, and Guess Who's Coming to Dinner. And I think he is the actor that I think most upcoming actors should study, because if you can see how Spencer Tracy plays, then I think you can learn a lot about how to use your facial expression, your voice, and the way you use your body. He was so much into the characters he's playing. Yeah, that is my list. I'm very curious to know your top 10 list, and thank you so much for watching this video. I hope you will all have a very nice day. Bye.